Welcome to Independent Sources. I'm Vianora Vinca.
And I'm Garry Pierre-Pierre. While the eyes of many in the U.S. are set firmly on the oil well belching an estimated 30,000 barrels of oil into the Gulf of Mexico every day, very few are aware of an equally terrible oil spill right here in New York City. That disaster has released an estimated 30 million gallons of oil and other dangerous chemicals into Newtown Creek and a 55-acre patch of soil in Greenpoint, Brooklyn.
On this edition of Independent Sources, what is being done to address the second largest oil spill in United States history?
We talk about the bitter battle over the proposed soda tax in New York State.
We see how one organization is helping gay immigrants cope when they arrive in the U.S.
And why is the Orthodox Jewish community not happy with this woman's title?
We'll have those stories and news of the week when we come back.
You have an incredible ability to reach and to persuade and to educate, and also to make people feel comfort and hope.
Newtown Creek is a 3.5-mile estuary that forms part of the border between Brooklyn and Queens. It's also the site of the second largest oil spill in U.S. history. The spill happened in the 1950s, but was only discovered by the Coast Guard in 1978. Since then, no company has officially claimed responsibility for the disaster that has spewed oil and other cancer-causing chemicals into the water and soil in nearby Greenpoint. A group of 5 oil companies, including BP, ExxonMobil, Chevron, National Grid, and Phelps Dodge, are currently working on strategies to help clean up the area. So what's being done as Newtown Creek awaits Superfund status? With me to discuss the issue is Phillip Musegaas of New York's clean water advocate Riverkeeper. Welcome.
Thank you.
We invited representatives from ExxonMobil and the Newtown Creek group to participate in the discussion, but they would not appear in studio. ExxonMobil did provide us with a statement on the incident that read, in part, ExxonMobil accepts responsibility to investigate and remediate petroleum contamination caused by its historic operations in Brooklyn. There never was a massive spill of petroleum products into Newtown Creek. In fact, a 2007 EPA report states that petroleum is not even believed to be the primary contributor to the creek's condition. Phillip, there never was a massive oil spill, petroleum spill in the creek. What do you make of the statement from ExxonMobil?
Well, I think that they are trying to minimize the comparison or the similarities between what happened on Newtown Creek and what's happening in the Gulf now. And so it's true to the extent that there was probably not one large massive oil spill that caused the Newtown Creek pollution, the oil spill pollution. But, the fact remains that basically most of the oil spill that occurred and the amount of contamination that's now in the environment, to us, it doesn't really make a difference. Whether it's one spill or 500 smaller spills, the end result is the same. And what you have in Newtown Creek and Greenpoint is a massive area of contamination. It's been very slowly attempted to be cleaned up by Exxon, but at a very slow pace.
And first time some action was taken to clean up the area was in 1990, even
Yes.
though the contamination was discovered in 78. How surprising is it that it took so long for any action to be taken?
Well, sadly to us, it's not that surprising. I think when you look at the area where the spill occurred, it's primarily an industrial area, but it does border a residential neighborhood in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. I think at the time when this happened, if this happened in the 1950s and 60s, it was discovered, quote unquote, in the 1970s by the Coast Guard. And the reason it took 12 years between 1978 and 1990 to get an agreement, who knows? But I think the main concern there is that this is a neighborhood of it's basically very diverse, lower economic, less economically developed, less prosperous neighborhood. There's probably less, at the time, there was less political organization and political clout. And so I think it became an environmental justice issue where the state of New York, in all likelihood at the time, didn't pay much attention to Newtown Creek and to Greenpoint because they didn't have to. There was no one telling them, hey, you need to get involved here. Now that's changed currently, but I think that was the case in the past.
And how much do we know about the health effects on the residents in that area, and how much are they aware of the contamination?
Well, we think, since 2002, when Riverkeeper became involved in the oil spill problem, and we helped to found a local neighborhood group, and we filed suit against Exxon. So various things happened that kind of raised public awareness about the spill. We think that generally the public that lives and works in the area is aware of the spill now and aware of the contamination. In terms of health effects and health concerns, there were, and there always have been, a lot of health concerns by local residents, and concerns about vapor intrusion from the oil and the groundwater coming up into people's homes. That was a concern after 2004. In 2009, the state of New York did an investigation, and they found that these concerns were unmerited, that there was not a concern of people being made ill from these vapors. Now, it's also important to keep in mind that Newtown Creek and Greenpoint is surrounded by industrial sites. You have the oil spill, you have oil refineries, you have the sewage treatment plant, which treats most of the sewage from New York City. You have a whole variety of things, and so unfortunately for the people in this neighborhood, it's really a kind of a toxic mix of industries that they have to deal with and that they live in the middle of.
And now let's talk about the Superfund. If this is going to be the solution to the cleanup, your organization has been lobbying with the EPA to add the Newtown Creek on the priorities list. What's the status of that request?
Well, we filed comments of supporting the Superfund idea for Newtown Creek in December of 2009. We expect a decision from the EPA in the fall of this year. It could come sooner, but generally they announce in the spring or the fall. We think they will list it on the Superfund list, which basically means that the EPA will come in and take authority over the site, come up with a plan to clean it up. They will also identify which companies, which polluters basically are responsible for the majority of the pollution in the creek, and those companies then will have to pay for the cleanup.
And now with the Superfund, how long do you expect the cleanup to take place?
Well, it can still take 10 to 20 years. It will probably take at least a couple of years to design a remediation plan, so a cleanup plan, figure out how much oil is actually in the creek, what kinds of remediation techniques need to be used to clean it up. So you have everything from dredging to treating the water, a whole range of different things. So just the planning will take a couple of years, and then the actual dredging, if it comes to that, could take anywhere from 5 to 10 years. So it's a long haul. I mean, we're in this process for the long haul, but we're happy now that there's finally attention paid to the creek. The residents, people of Greenpoint that live there, are finally having their concerns heard by the state and by the federal government.
Now, is the Superfund falling short in any aspects when it comes to the cleanup?
Well, there are concerns. Some people are opposed to it. There are concerns about the delays and how long the process takes. Also the fact that Superfund, it's very important to note, only applies to the waterway itself. So Newtown Creek and the sediment that lies at the bottom of the creek that's so contaminated, Superfund will only deal with the waterway and will deal with pollution that's still leaching into the creek from surrounding sites, but it won't deal with the land pollution.
And how are you going to address the land pollution?
Well, when we filed suit against ExxonMobil in 2004, one of the main goals of Riverkeeper's lawsuit was to force Exxon and other companies that were responsible for the spill to have to deal with the land pollution. So we are in settlement negotiations now. We're optimistic that if we have the case settled, that settlement will lead to a cleanup of the land pollution.
Phillip Musegaas, thank you very much for coming in the studio to discuss this important matter. Now here's Abi Ishola with some other news.
Thanks, Vianora. Here's a look at some headlines from the ethnic media. El Diario La Prensa reports the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, recently ran an investigation to check the legal status of Gulf oil spill workers. Louisiana police requested ICE's intervention once rumors surfaced that illegal workers were helping to clean up the oil spill in the Gulf. All workers were found to be here legally, and no arrests were made. From Caribbean Life, does Brooklyn need a high school especially for Caribbean American students? In a letter to the editor, Kingsley Dugan says one phased-out high school in Canarsie should be turned into a school that focuses on Caribbean American studies. Dugan says students at Canarsie would reap the same benefits as students at specialized schools like Khalil Academy, a school for Arab American Studies, and the High School for Dual Languages and Asian Studies. Canarsie is heavily populated by West Indians. A Filipina Catholic nurse is suing Mount Sinai Hospital for allegedly forcing her to perform an abortion against her will and religious beliefs. Katharina Lorenza Senzo de Carlo says she told the hospital about her religious objections to performing abortions when she was hired in 2004. And finally, from the Amsterdam News, Football Hall of Famer Emmitt Smith is gearing up to become a Harlem hotel owner. The New York Economic Development Corporation, NYEDC, recently voted in favor of Smith's future 100,000 square foot hotel at 125th Street and Lenox Avenue. An additional 120,000 square feet of the project will go towards a new Harlem YMCA and retail space. Those are just a few headlines from the ethnic media. Back to you, Gary.
New Yorkers are being bombarded with television commercials, newspaper ads, internet pages, and even tweets attacking Governor Patterson's proposed tax on drinks with high sugar content. Those ads appeal to the public's shrinking buying power and dislike for taxes. On the other hand, there are health officials who argue that taxing these drinks will cut out on consumption and help combat the growing rates of obesity, type 2 diabetes, and heart disease, especially among children. With me to discuss the battle over the soda tax are Simone-Marie Meeks of the New York Academy of Medicine and Nelson Eusebio, Executive Director of the National Supermarkets Association. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we start, let's take a look at two of the commercials we mentioned discussing the pros and cons of the proposed tax.
Over 10 million New Yorkers are dangerously overweight. By adding pennies to the cost of sugary sodas and drinks, we can help reduce obesity, and we can use the money to stop devastating healthcare cuts in Albany.
Many studies have shown that reducing the intake of sugary drinks and soda by even as little as 1 can a day can reduce your risk of being overweight by more than 60%.
Tell Albany to pass the soda tax. Make New York healthier.
When I heard that they wanted to implement a tax on juice drinks and the sodas, this is another way to get into our pockets. They talk about pennies here, pennies there, but you know what? In these type of communities, it all adds up. With my customers, when they come to shop, the majority of them bring notepads and calculators because they're working on a budget. New Yorkers cannot afford another tax.
Simone, there's no question that we face serious health issues, but is a tax on soda consumption the best policy to address this issue?
It's one of the best policies. The reason that we at the New York Academy of Medicine are supporting the tax is because we have studies that show that if you increase the price of the drinks, there's a correlation between what people will buy. We need people to drink less soda. We know for a fact that soda consumption has increased. We know for a fact that those children born in 2000 are far more likely, 1 in 3, to end up with diabetes. We know that there is great advertising pushing soda as opposed to healthier choices. And we know that healthier choices exist. And being concerned with health, particularly, we have to be concerned that this is a tax we can't just let go of. Many people see it as just grabbing for money. We see it as an opportunity to change the health of people.
Nelson, I mean, what is your take on this issue? I know that you don't support the taxes, but what about the health issues that we're dealing with? How would you best address this situation?
I think everybody's concerned about health, but when you address health, you address it through education. You educate the public and teach them better eating habits. You don't penalize them by taxing them. If taxation was a way to better health, New Yorkers would be the healthiest people in the country, because God knows we're overtaxed as it is right now.
And what are you educating them? How? What do you do? I mean, how do you educate people on health issues?
Well, commercials, schools, state government, city government can teach people how to have a balanced diet, how to eat right. I remember years ago we used to have commercials on TV about the ABCs and the pyramids of eating right. Those commercials disappear. Maybe we should bring them back because they were helpful. To penalize people on their choice, we think that's unfair.
Go ahead. You have something to say about that.
What we do is look at the evidence. The evidence tells us that education alone cannot solve the problem of obesity.
What evidence do you have to
If
back
you
that
look
up?
at a study by the Center for Science in the Public Interest, as well as economic studies, they talk about the correlation between what people eat and what they buy. We also know that people are influenced by advertising for sure. That is the reason why the American Beverage Association last year spent $140,000 in advertising on this issue, and this year is spending $5.2 million on that issue. And we believe that if you really cared about health, that you'd spend that money encouraging people to purchase options that are currently available within the three large ones, Pepsi, Coca-Cola, and Snapple. All have options, some 50 to 30 different options that are either low calorie or 0 calorie. We're for taxing those drinks that are more than 10 calories per 8 ounces.
Now, so let me ask you, does this issue disproportionately affect minorities than whites?
Absolutely, 100%. And the sad part about it, that these are the people that the state claims that they're targeting, that they wanted to help, because they claim that obesity, it's higher in the inner city. But what we're doing is we're telling people who are economically challenged now as it is to sacrifice more of their dollar to support this tax.
Quite the
so
contrary.
when a customer comes into one of our stores, if they have $5 to spend, this $5 is going to go a lot less than would go before.
You disagree?
Absolutely disagree. This is not a regressive tax. Therefore, this is not about taxing something that people must have. People will drink. They can drink water, they can drink milk, they can drink diet soda, they can drink juices, all of which are not subject to the tax. And I would say that if you have less money, you shouldn't be drinking soda. That should be taken off your budget list. In times of recession, you do not need to be drinking soda, when in fact, it has been shown that the more you drink, the greater the number of fat cells created, the more likely you are to have other diabetes, cancer, heart disease, all of that as a byproduct of having too much soda, or not just soda, but sweetened beverages in your diet. Because what happens is when you create these fat cells, your hormones cannot work the way they're supposed to.
We agree with you 100%, but the fact is soda's been around for 100 years, and we haven't had an obesity problem for 100 years. We have an obesity problem the last 10
It's been around for 400 years?
100 years.
Okay.
100 years. And the obesity problem has come about the last 20 years. Why is that? Because people are inactive. People are sitting in front of a computer and the internet. Children are not out playing like they used to. People don't ride bikes. Children don't when you give your kids a gift, you don't give them a bicycle anymore. You give them an internet toy. You give them something to play with his hands. We need the kids to be more active, and thus reducing obesity.
Speaking of kids, Simone, I'd like to touch upon this because Mayor Bloomberg recently eliminated soda machines from the schools. How effective has that been in curbing obesity?
Well, the soda machines haven't been eliminated. The sodas have been replaced with lower calorie drinks. That has been quite effective. What the difference, however, is obesity has become a problem in the last 20 years, and let me tell you what happened. In addition to, soda has always been around, yes, but we didn't once encourage kids to drink soda first thing in the morning. We weren't telling kids that it's okay to drink a supersized soda every time you go to McDonald's. We didn't make it cheaper. In fact, soda has not kept pace with recession. While everything has increased, the cost of sugar-sweetened beverages has decreased, suggesting to people this is something that you should buy. And we in the public health field feel that if we really care about the fact that, yes, it's true, a lot of kids are less active, a lot of people are less active, but we support educational alternatives. We support educating people about what the problem is. We support that you should buy your child a bike and give safe places to play, as in supporting legislation that will call for safe streets. But we also are aware that the industry is spending more to advertise in the very communities where the problem exists most.
Unfortunately, we have to leave it at that. Nelson Eusebio and Simone-Marie Meeks, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
We'll be right back. The LGBT Community Center here in New York operates as a refuge for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender immigrants, many of whom come to the center having suffered torture and trauma in their countries of origin. Some are fearful of being discovered as undocumented or being outed in their communities. The center's immigrant services addresses these well-founded fears with a support and advocacy group, the Social Action Network. Producer Anjanette Levert spoke to 3 members, Jason, Maurice, and Britta, about their journeys from their homelands to the U.S. and the Social Action Network. Here they are in their own words.
I came to the group and there was like all these different people from different nationalities. I was like, wow. And we had one thing in common. We all had a story to tell.
And the first day I came to the center, I was so empowered. I knew that this is where I belong.
All the people in the group are very sweet, wonderful people.
Our services to immigrants provides immigrant support groups for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender immigrants. And then there's also the LGBT Immigrant Social Action Group. What we do is that we use community empowerment model to give people the tools to learn how to have a voice for themselves and to use their stories to transform policy, to transform their lives, to make friendships, and to decrease their sense of isolation.
Hello, hello. I stopped in New York for 2 weeks and then I found the village. It was like walking in the Wizard of Oz. You know, the yellow brick road is like walking Christopher Street. It's like, wow, I don't believe this. I am actually on Christopher Street, where it's like so many, gay people walking hands in hand, holding hand, kissing. I was like, just being themselves, they have the height to be who they really are. I was like, I want this life. I want to be happy.
I came in New York after seeing how everyone is comfortable being gay. And I knew, unlike Grenada, that I was not comfortable. So I decided in 1998 to come here after spending like 2 weeks here and going back home for 2 days. I knew this is where I was supposed to be.
I came to the United States for freedom and liberty. I left Germany behind, and I didn't come for reasons many others come. I didn't want fame, nor did I want a better education because I had all of that. But I wasn't free as a gay person, as a homosexual woman.
And I had this particular friend, I would call them and I'd be like, I'm depressed, and he'd be like, oh, please, you can never be depressed. You're just this public-good-lucky guy, how could you be depressed? I'd be like, I'm really depressed. I'm contemplating suicide.
I didn't want to go out and talk to people because they always Americans ask, so what do you do for a living? Or whatever. And so I couldn't say anything. And I couldn't talk too much because I was afraid if people discovered I'm illegally here, then I would be reported to authorities, and at the same time I didn't want to lie.
I was home, I was just lonely, and I said, I cannot continue living like this. And I asked God for guidance, and just doing a Google search and finding this wonderful lady who said to me, you know what, there is hope, there is help. I can put it to the right people. That's when I was able to get my asylum. And one of the things that I said to myself is that once this happened, I'm going to go back and show people who are in the same position that I were in to get the help.
Come on in, Samara.
For the first time in my life, in almost 11 years, I find minds that are similar. And I find hearts that are as hurt and yet still open as mine.
I realized that your family is not really your family. The people who love you and accept you are your family, your true family, And that my family, I realize now, is a social action group.
And finally from us tonight, part 4 of our Keep the Faith series. When Rabbi Avi Weiss ordained a woman as Rabba earlier this year, he created a stir in the Orthodox community. Rabbi Weiss's decision to confer the title to Sara Hurwitz prompted a huge reaction. He was denounced by the Agudat Israel of America and from his own organization, the Rabbinical Council of America. That organization consists of about 1,000 centrist Orthodox rabbis who believe that women certainly have their places in synagogues, but they're not comfortable about giving them the title of Rabba. Garry filed this report.
A virgin, right? Which is important. She's this young, beautiful, naive woman, right?
Sara Hurwitz students could easily pass for her grandmother or grandfather, but the 33-year-old trailblazer is the one giving sagely advice. The hour-long class takes place once a week at the Hebrew Institute of Riverdale. The subjects range from women's role in biblical times to the contemporary. Rabba Hurwitz is causing a stir in this tranquil corner of the Bronx because of her title. She is one of the few, if not the only Rabba in Orthodox Jewry. The spiritual leader says she has been preparing for this moment since her undergraduate studies.
When I started college, my parents had me take a vocational test just so that I would have some direction when I was at Barnard, Columbia. And the results of the test showed that I was best suited for clergy, which at the time we all laughed because there wasn't a place for Orthodox women to be in positions of clergy.
So Rabba Hurwitz went on to pursue religious studies, even volunteering at various synagogues. That's when she met her mentor, Rabbi Avi Weiss, in her life's change.
And after being here for a year, we both began to dream together what the criteria would be for the community to accept me as a full-fledged rabbinic authority or a member of the clergy.
Rabbi Hurwitz continued her studies and took all of the tests that Orthodox students have to master.
When I finished, which was about 2 years ago, I looked at Rabbi Weiss and I said, now what? And we decided that we would have a public, what we called conferral ceremony, with the goal of letting others know that this is a possibility, that this is a path, a career path that women can take to become spiritual leaders.
Her ordination has been profoundly controversial within the Orthodox world. Some say that Weiss, already considered to be on the edge of mainstream orthodoxy on religious issues, is venturing over that edge.
The issue of women's ordination for many years, for centuries, was not an issue. There were strong delineations between men's roles and women's roles within Judaism, each of equivalent importance, but each distinct.
Rabbi Goldin, who leads a New Jersey synagogue and is vice president of the Rabbinical Council of America, says that as women have become more educated, many like Rabba Hurwitz are confronting age-old traditions.
We still believe and we still maintain that this distinction between men and women's roles within the tradition, however, has to be maintained as well. So we're in favor of encouraging this increased learning, encouraging this increased scholarship, encouraging their increased involvement. But by finding paths and avenues that are distinctly theirs and will allow for their voice to be heard as well as the man's voice, but not necessarily to cross over that boundary where you have equality meaning sameness.
Something that Rabba Hurwitz says is unacceptable.
It isn't common to have women lead synagogues and to be in positions of rabbinic authority. And for me, it was a calling. I loved the job. I loved building relationships with people and connecting with families. And but there aren't formal roles for women in spiritual leadership.
Until now. For Independent Sources, I'm Garry Pierre-Pierre.
That's our show. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again in the new season when we bring you more stories from the ethnic and immigrant press.
Until then, be independent-minded.